Today, we're diving into Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, and we're going to explore the secret world of snap judgments. The incredible power of thinking without actually thinking.
So let me just start by asking you a question. Do you trust your gut? Or do you think that slow, careful, deliberate thinking is always the way to go? Well, Blink makes a pretty bold claim that the decisions we make in an instant can be just as good and sometimes, even better than the ones we spend ages agonizing over. See, you can think of our minds as having two different gears. You've got your conscious, analytical mind. That's the one you use for, say, a math problem. But then there's this other gear, rapid cognition. It's like this instantaneous, unconscious computer that's processing information in, well, the blink of an eye. So, how in the world does this second brain actually work? Let's dig into the science behind what we call intuition, or, that gut feeling.
Gladwell gives it a name, the adaptive unconscious. And you can picture it as this giant supercomputer locked away in our heads. It's constantly sizing up the world, making judgments, and guiding our behavior, all without us even being aware of it. And it makes sense, right? This is a survival tool, something we've been honing for thousands of years to make these lightning-fast calls about threats and opportunities.
And here's the cool part. When this adaptive unconscious is really working, it's not just fast. It's incredibly powerful and, honestly, surprisingly accurate. Let's look at some examples. Okay, check this out. There was a famous study by a psychologist named Nalini Ambady. She showed that students who watched just a 2-second silent clip of a professor could predict how effective that professor would be just as accurately as the students who are in their class for the whole semester. 2 seconds versus an entire term. That's wild.
And there's a name for this. It's called thin slicing. It's our unconscious mind's amazing ability to take a tiny sliver of information, a thin slice, and find the hidden pattern in it. And that lets us make a much, much bigger judgment.
And this isn't just for rating professors. A psychologist named John Gottman is basically a master of thin slicing relationships. He can watch a married couple interact for just a few minutes, and he can predict with 90% accuracy whether they're going to be together in 15 years. 90%.
So how does he do it? It's not magic. He's thin slicing for one very specific emotion: contempt. If Gottman sees even a flicker of contempt from one partner to another, he knows. That's the single biggest red flag. That one tiny emotional cue tells him the whole story.
And once you start looking for it, you see this expert thin slicing everywhere. You've got art historians who can spot a forgery in a heartbeat, or elite basketball players who just have a court sense. They know where everyone's going to be. And then there's this incredible story of a fireman. He's fighting a kitchen fire, and all of a sudden he gets this weird, inexplicable feeling that something is deeply wrong, and he yells for his men to get out. Moments later, the floor caves in. The real fire was in the basement all along. He didn't know why he knew. He just knew.
But, and believe me, this is a huge but, our snap judgments are not perfect. Not by a long shot. Our unconscious mind can be hijacked by our own stereotypes and prejudices just as easily as it can be guided by real expertise.
Let's talk about President Warren Harding. The guy was elected mostly because he just looked presidential. He was tall, handsome, had this commanding presence, and people thin-sliced his appearance and just assumed he had all the qualities of a great leader. Well, history now sees him as one of the worst presidents ever. Gladwell calls this the Harding error.
And you might be thinking, okay, that was 100 years ago. But this isn't just some historical thing. It is still happening. Only about 15% of American men are over 6 feet tall. But get this, a whopping 58% of Fortune 500 CEOs are. We still unconsciously connect height with leadership. That's a modern-day Harding error.
And these biases aren't just about who gets the corner office. When our thin slicing goes wrong in high-stakes, high-pressure situations, the results can be absolutely devastating.
In 1999, 4 New York police officers came across an unarmed immigrant from West Africa named Amadou Diallo on his own doorstep. They fired 41 shots at him, and he was killed instantly. So what happened? The officers' unconscious minds thin-sliced the whole situation. A black man in a high-crime neighborhood, late at night, and he's acting a little strange. When he reached into his pocket, he was just getting his wallet, their rapid cognition screamed gun. And it was a truly catastrophic failure of a snap judgment. So why does something like this happen? Well, a psychologist named Keith Payne explains it pretty clearly. He says that under intense pressure, our conscious, rational brain just kind of checks out. We don't have time to think. And in that empty space, our hidden biases and our stereotypes, things we might not even consciously believe, can rush in and just take over.
Okay, so if snap judgments can be both brilliant and dangerously flawed, what are we supposed to do? The answer isn't to just stop trusting your instincts. It's about learning to understand them and to train them. And this really gets to the heart of it all. This is the big takeaway. Good snap judgments, like the art expert or the fireman, they come from thousands of hours of experience. Their unconscious has this rich, deep library of patterns to pull from. But bad snap judgments, the Harding error, the Dilo tragedy, they happen when our unconscious has nothing to go on, and so it defaults to a shallow library of prejudice and stereotypes.
So, how do we improve our intuition? Well, it starts by just acknowledging that this hidden world of snap judgments even exists. We need to respect our first impressions, but also be ready and willing to question them. It's really about building up genuine expertise so our unconscious has better, richer data to work with. It's about learning to filter out all the noise and find the patterns that actually matter, just like John Gottman did when he focused only on contempt.
Ultimately, the power of Blink is realizing that our intuition isn't some kind of magic power. It's a tool, it's a muscle, and it can be incredibly strong when it's trained on experience and data, but dangerously weak when it's just left to rely on bias. So the real question is, how are you going to train yours?